Imagine spending like $50 million to buy a brand new nervous system for your company.
Right.
You bring in the top surgeons, you wheel the patient into the operating room, and halfway through the procedure, you realize the surgeons aren't actually talking to each other.
Oh, yeah. That's a disaster.
And even worse, the patient is still expected to, I don't know, run a marathon while their chest is wide open.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
Because that is the reality of a botched enterprise resource planning, or ERP, implementation. I mean, if you're listening to this right now, you have probably lived through a corporate software rollout that felt like a slow-motion car crash.
Most people have, honestly.
Right. So today, we have this highly detailed project management blueprint for implementing a massive, really complex system called Infor LN.
Yeah, it's a beast of a system.
So whether you are managing a global project or just, trying to survive your company's latest tech upgrade, we are figuring out how to survive this surgery. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the overarching theme of these sources isn't actually software configuration, which, might surprise some people.
Wait, really? It's not about the software.
No, not at its core. What's fascinating here is the sheer psychological and logistical maneuvering required to keep a business functioning while replacing its core technology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we are looking at a roadmap for aligning, stubborn human behavior, decades of messy legacy data, and this really rigid new technological framework.
So it's more about the people than the code.
Exactly. Because before anyone writes a single line of code, the organization has to do something incredibly uncomfortable. They have to admit how their business actually operates today.
Oh, man. I would imagine the official corporate manual rarely matches what the employees are actually doing on the ground.
It never matches. I mean, never. And that disparity is why the blueprint mandates, starting with what they call a discovery workshop.
Okay, what does that look like?
Yeah. It's this rigorous, highly structured audit of the entire IT landscape and, every active business workflow. The implementation team has to identify the true strategic goals. Like, are we implementing Infor LN to consolidate 10 different software systems into one?
Right.
Or are we just trying to cut operational costs? Then they have to document every external system that feeds data into the current setup and literally map every single active module from finance all the way down to warehousing.
Honestly, it sounds less like IT work and more like an archaeological dig into a company's hidden habits.
That is a great way to put it.
Like finding out that the entire procurement department relies on a single 15-year-old spreadsheet maintained by some guy named Jim.
Yes. Unearthing Jim's spreadsheet is exactly the goal of the discovery phase. You have to find Jim.
Protect Jim at all costs.
Exactly. And so once that operational map is drawn, the architects move to the fit gap analysis.
This gap. Okay, what is that?
They take every single business requirement uncovered during discovery, and they sort them into 3 distinct buckets. The first is fit cases. These are the easy wins.
The straightforward stuff.
Right. The requirement is handled perfectly by the standard out-of-the-box Infor LN functionality, no tweaks needed.
I like to think of this in terms of like renovating a house.
Okay, I like that.
A fit case is basically going to the hardware store and buying a standard door. You buy it, you slide it into the frame, and you are done. Fits perfectly.
A very fitting analogy, honestly. So the second category is fit cases with extensions.
Okay, so a little more complicated.
Just a bit. The standard software gets you, say, 90% of the way there, but you need a supplementary tool from the Infor ecosystem to finish the job.
Like what kind of tool?
Well, for example, you might need their Burst Business Intelligence tool to generate a very specific data visualization, or the Ion framework, which is basically their messaging system, to connect the ERP to an external application.
Got it. So sticking with the house renovation, an extension is like buying that standard door but then adding a smart lock.
Yes, exactly.
Takes a little specialized wiring, maybe an add-on, but you are still essentially working within normal parameters.
Right, you're not rebuilding the wall. But the real complication arises when we hit the third category, the gap cases.
Uh-oh. Gaps sound expensive.
They are. A gap case is a business requirement that the new software simply cannot perform, even with standard extensions.
Oh, wow. So what do you do?
Well, when an organization hits a gap, the options are, frankly, universally painful. You can keep your old third-party app and try to build a custom bridge to the new system.
Sounds messy.
Very. Or you can punt the requirement entirely and defer it until after go live. You can write bespoke, custom code to force the software to do it, or, And this requires the absolute most organizational courage. You re-engineer your own business process to match the standard software.
See, this is where I know a lot of managers would push back.
Oh, absolutely they do.
If retraining employees and changing deeply ingrained human behavior is so difficult, why not just pay developers to write the custom code for the gaps?
It's tempting, right?
Yeah. Make the software adapt to the business. Going back to the house analogy, if I want a moat around my property, I'm just going to hire someone to dig the moat.
And digging the moat feels like the path of least resistance on day one, definitely. But what's fascinating here is that the source material vehemently warns against doing that.
Really? Why?
Because custom code creates a massive anchor of technical debt. This is why the blueprint emphasizes prioritizing these complex gaps immediately during what they call the solutioning phase. If you defer the decision on how to handle a gap, it becomes a massive bottleneck right before the deadline.
Okay, so if custom code is generally out and we are forced to, re-engineer our own departments to fit the standard software, how do we decide which departments get disrupted first?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because we clearly can't flip a switch and change the entire company overnight. That sort of transitions us into sequencing the surgery, right?
Right. Solutioning is entirely about making hard structural choices and locking them in so the actual build can begin. First, you have to decide the disposition of external systems.
Like what stays and what goes.
Exactly. Let's say your sales team absolutely refuses to give up their Salesforce CRM.
Which happens all the time.
All the time. So you have to formally decide to keep it and build a bidirectional data integration so Salesforce and Infor LN can actually talk to each other. You also have to lock in your data migration strategy at this point.
Now, how does that actually work mechanically? I'm assuming we aren't just taking 20 years of old company data and dumping it directly into the new software.
Oh, definitely not. Doing that would guarantee failure.
Right, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. You are essentially poisoning the new system with decades of typos, obsolete inventory, and dead customer accounts. The documentation dictates a very strict cleansing process.
So they scrub everything.
Yes. The business has to decide what actually makes the cut. Usually it's only open orders, active inventory balances, and current master data.
What happens to all the old stuff?
The vast majority of historical data is moved into a read-only legacy archive. You can still look up a 10-year-old invoice if you get audited, but it isn't clogging up the new ERP.
Okay, so the data is clean, the external systems are decided. Now we have to phase the rollout itself.
Right, the sequencing.
So if I am the executive sponsoring this massive, painful project, I want an early win to boost morale. I want to launch the sales module first, or maybe customer service, something flashy. Why does the text insist that finance is almost always the phase one anchor?
It's a common request, but it doesn't work. Because the general ledger is the central nervous system of the entire enterprise.
Oh, interesting.
Putting sales first might sound good for morale, but it completely lacks the necessary foundation. Every single transaction in a deep ERP eventually ends up as a financial posting.
Okay, walk me through that.
Well, when the manufacturing floor consumes raw steel to build a part, that triggers a cost posting. When purchasing receives a shipment of screws, it hits accounts payable. When sales ships the final product, it recognizes revenue.
I see. So the new ERP doesn't know how to process the cost of that raw steel unless the financial architecture is already built and waiting to receive the data.
Exactly the issue. You physically cannot run those operational modules without the finance anchor already live and stable. Therefore, finance goes first. Typically, warehousing and manufacturing are then co-deployed later to ensure the physical supply chain isn't broken.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because now we know what we are building and in what order. But who actually holds the scalpel?
The consultants.
Right, and the sources are incredibly strict about the specific types of external consultants you are allowed to hire to build this.
They really are. Infor LN is a remarkably deep, multi-domain environment. In a smaller software rollout, you might hire, a generalist IT consultant who handles a little bit of accounting and a little bit of inventory.
Sure, jack of all trades.
Right. But the blueprint states categorically that a generalist will fail here. You must hire specialized functional consultants for every single module.
It genuinely sounds like assembling a crew for a complex heist movie.
It really does.
You can't just hire 5 people who are vaguely good at crimes.
Yeah.
You need the safecracker, the tech hacker, the getaway driver.
Yeah. Yes, the specialization required is intense. You need a finance consultant available from the jump to build the chart of accounts. You need a manufacturing and planning consultant who deeply understands how to configure a bill of materials.
Which is like the recipe, right?
Exactly, the exact recipe of raw materials needed for a product. And they need to know the routings, which are the step-by-step assembly instructions for the machines.
Wow, that is specific.
Oh, very. And then you need a warehousing consultant who knows how to integrate third-party WMS or warehouse management system, handheld scanners. And finally, you need an integration consultant acting as the traffic cop, setting up the APIs on the ION platform so data flows cleanly between all these moving parts.
Okay, but let's look at the heist crew. What happens if the safecracker, the finance consultant, and the getaway driver, the warehousing consultant, aren't on the same page?
That is a major risk.
What if finance builds a cost structure that requires a 6-digit project code for every single item, but the warehousing consultant bought barcode scanners that only physically read 4 digits?
See, that structural clash is a primary failure condition in ERP projects. If these specialists work in silos, their individual configurations will collide, and those collisions typically remain completely hidden until the very end of the project during testing.
Which is the worst possible time to find out.
Exactly. So to prevent your scanner scenario, the methodology introduces the most critical external role, the solution architect.
Ah, the mastermind of the heist. The person looking at the entire blueprint all at once.
Exactly. The solution architect is usually the most senior engineer. Their sole responsibility is cross-module consistency. They force the finance lead and the warehousing lead to actually talk to each other to ensure that a master data decision made in accounting doesn't break the outbound logistics flow on the shipping dock.
That makes total sense.
Furthermore, the document highlights a severe risk tied to these specialists, and that's consultant turnover.
Right, losing your safecracker halfway through the job.
It's devastating. Replacing deeply specialized knowledge midstream destroys project timelines. The documentation advises implementing continuity clauses in vendor contracts and establishing rigorous formal knowledge transfer protocols.
So there's a paper trail.
Yes. If your lead manufacturing consultant gets sick or takes another job, their replacement needs to be able to read the documentation and pick up exactly where they left off without having to re-interview the entire business.
Okay, so let's say you have an airtight contract. You hired the perfect external mercenary team. The mastermind is keeping everyone aligned. It seems like the project is destined for success.
You'd think so.
But the text pivots entirely here. Even the greatest heist crew will fail if the inside man is asleep.
Oh, absolutely.
The external experts can build a flawless system, but it will shatter upon impact if the internal business team isn't heavily engaged.
This is a devastating blind spot for so many organizations. They treat the external consultants as a vendor delivering a finished product, almost like ordering a pizza.
Right, just drop it off at the front desk.
Exactly. But an ERP is co-created. No external architect knows your company's weird exception scenarios, your most difficult customers, or your daily operational quirks.
Like Jim's spreadsheet.
Like Jim's spreadsheet, the internal team has to provide that context.
You have the executive sponsor, usually a VP or C-suite executive. They aren't in the weeds every day, but their job is to be the muscle.
Very much.
If two departments are arguing over a process change, the sponsor has to step in and unblock the escalation within 24 to 48 hours to keep the timeline moving.
Right. And beneath the sponsor, you have the module key users. These are your subject matter experts from the actual business, like the senior accountant, the warehouse manager.
The people actually doing the job.
Yes. They validate the external consultant's designs, they lead the testing, and they eventually train their own peers. Add to that the data owners who are individually responsible for extracting that legacy data we discussed, cleaning it, and signing off on its accuracy.
So what does this all mean for the people actually doing the work? It describes something called the dual burden. And if you are listening to this right now, and you are a mid-level manager or a senior specialist, you are probably the key user they're going to tap for this project.
Most likely, yes.
That executives will commit their best employees to the ERP project, but simultaneously expect them to maintain their full operational workload.
Which is wild.
Right. My question is, how on earth is a key user supposed to dedicate 70% of their week to testing software while still doing 100% of their normal day job?
They cannot. It is mathematically impossible, and yet companies attempt it constantly.
It's a recipe for disaster.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, treating internal employee time as a limitless, free resource is a predictable recipe for burnout. The project management blueprint refuses to accept this. It dictates that time must be formalized.
How do you actually force an executive to respect that math, though?
Through a binding availability calendar and defined percentage commitments per phase. It cannot be a casual handshake agreement.
It has to be in writing.
It must be documented. For example, the senior accountant is committed to the project at 30% capacity during the design phase, scaling up to 70% capacity during testing. But documenting the time isn't enough. The vital mechanism here is backfill planning.
Meaning the company actually has to spend money to hire a temporary worker or formally shift duties to junior staff to cover that 70% absence.
Precisely. Because if the backfill isn't formally secure before the project launches, human nature takes over.
What happens then?
The moment there is an operational crisis, say a massive month-end close or the seasonal spike in orders, the department manager will panic and pull that key user off the ERP project to handle the daily fires.
And they will pull them away at the exact moment the implementation requires their expertise the most.
Exactly.
That is a brilliant insight. The project doesn't blow up because the cloud servers fail. It blows up because the company refused to admit its employees only have 40 hours in a week.
That's the real failure point.
So, assuming a company actually listens to this, they backfill their staff, they protect their internal team's time, and the external consultants are aligned. We finally reach the trenches, the execution phase.
The trial by fire. Everything designed in the blueprint is subjected to iterative build and validate cycles. The most critical hurdles here are the CRPs, or conference room pilots.
I compare the conference room pilots to dress rehearsals in a theater. You don't just read the script, you actually get on stage.
Right.
The key users sit down at a terminal with the newly configured software, and they attempt to execute their end-to-end jobs. They try to process a complex order from the initial customer, quote, through manufacturing, all the way to shipping and invoicing. They are actively trying to see if the script works in the real world.
And when the script breaks, when they uncover a gap that wasn't caught during design, it is logged and assessed instantly. And parallel to these dress rehearsals, the team is executing mock data migrations.
Wait, they don't just migrate the data once?
Oh no, the methodology demands at least 2 full mock migrations in test environments prior to go live. You have to validate the transformation rules.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, if you mapped an old customer category to a new data field, did it translate correctly for all 10,000 customers? You cannot afford to discover a translation error on the morning the system goes live.
Which brings us to the actual go live and the intensely named hypercare period. They physically establish a war room.
A war room is essential, whether it's physical or virtual. It contains the external consultants, the key users, and direct lines to Infor support. Go live is orchestrated by a minute-by-minute cutover plan.
So intense.
And once the new system is turned on, hypercare begins. This is a highly structured 4 to 8 week period of triage. There are daily status reviews and rapid incident response teams.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. And hypercare does not end just because the calendar hits week 4. It only concludes when the critical bugs are squashed and the internal staff proves they can run the business without the external consultants holding their hands.
Keeping this entire chaotic theater from burning down is the governance framework, right? The steering committee handling escalations, the change control boards, preventing scope creep. But the tool that stands out the most to me is the RAID log. Risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies.
The RAID log is the ultimate mechanism for enforcing transparency. But more importantly, it forces psychological accountability.
Wait, how does a spreadsheet force psychological accountability?
By requiring a named owner and a target resolution date for every single item. Take the assumptions category, for instance.
Sure.
Unspoken assumptions destroy projects. Someone might casually assume, oh, our current warehouse Wi-Fi routers are fast enough to handle the new Infor LN mobile scanners.
Man, if they aren't.
Well, if that stays an unspoken assumption, no one tests it until go live, and the warehouse grinds to a complete halt. The RAID log forces someone to write that assumption down, assign Jim's name to it, and give Jim a deadline to actually go test the Wi-Fi.
It eliminates plausible deniability. You can't say, I thought someone else was handling that, when your name is literally on the log.
Exactly.
So to bring it all together for you listening, the ultimate aha moment of diving into this massive ERP implementation blueprint is a total shift in perspective. We hear software upgrade and we think about code, cloud architecture, and server racks.
Right, the tech stuff.
But that a project of this magnitude is barely about technology at all. It is a massive high-stakes exercise in human psychology, resource management, and setting firm, unyielding boundaries around people's time. The tech is just the tool. The human alignment is the actual project.
This raises an important question, and it is a reality check that echoes far beyond software implementations. The methodology makes it undeniably clear that executing a successful transformative project absolutely requires creating formal boundaries around your employees' time.
Right.
It demands backfilling their daily operational roles so they have the mental bandwidth to innovate and actually build the future state of the company. If that is a fundamental mathematical truth of managing organizational change, why do so many modern businesses pride themselves in operating with zero staffing slack?
Wow, yeah.
Does running a lean organization where every single employee is already redlining at 100% capacity just to keep the lights on actually make a company fundamentally incapable of innovating without sacrificing the health of its best people?
That is the lingering thought for anyone currently running on a corporate treadmill. You cannot perform open-heart surgery if the patient is forced to keep sprinting. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, and we'll catch you next time.